dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you need the wrong or right. You never know.
Rob, what do you know of the powers of the mind?
Very little. I'm a moron myself, Matt, so it's kind of beyond my ken.
Actually, I was going to say we could work with that, but actually we can't. You're going to need a high intelligence score for this one, folks, because we're going to talk about MCDM's new class for 5th edition, the Talent.
See, now, Matt, I don't know much about intelligence, but I do know about talent. I know about the unbearable weight of massive talent. I know about the talented Mr. Ripley. I know all sorts of things about the parable of the talents. I mean, this is something I'm familiar with.
Well, if you would like a large weight of silver or to be the talented Mr. Ripley in your game, you can play as the Talent. No, actually, the Talent is MCDM's take on the Psion class and on a psionic system for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. And we've seen a lot of these, and I think the reason we're talking about this one was the first one that kind of interested me.
It's also the first one that's, well, it's not the, I mean, there are a lot of third-party versions of this, but MCDM is basically, they're a cut above, right? Like, it's different when you find a random Psion on DM's Guild and when, Matt Colville and company put out a psionic supplement. This is different.
Or the host of a podcast shares a 90-page Google document that's like, do you want to convert psionics to the 5e spellcasting system? And you could use that, but it would be very boring, and this is something interesting. Let's talk a little more broadly about psionics. We talked about how in the past, like, Eberron's the only campaign setting to really integrate it well, but lots of players like it. It's been through so many rule changes over the years, from 2e to 3e. 4e had, psionics front and center, and it be completely ignored by 5e because they failed to get their version of the class tuned in, and they gave up.
Yeah, I mean, as I was reading this, I was sort of like reflecting on how weird this is. Bear with me for a second. Like, there was a time, and younger listeners, you have felt the knock-on effects of this, but in the 80s, in the high times of hot tubs and cocaine over at TSR, the Dungeons & Dragons included futuristic nanotech robots. It included real life gods. It included, Professor X, Jean Grey style psionics. And this is just sort of baked in to the setting, but it's not actually sort of a given that this is a part of a D&D or fantasy adventure, but because it's been a part of D&D for so long, it feels sort of, it goes without comment. And as I was, I guess, reflecting on it, I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. I don't know how well this fits into, a generic D&D setting. And we could talk about that a little bit more later. But I think that this is what, we've been hard on Wizards recently, and I will not apologize. But I think that the Mystic was a valiant attempt. I am sad that the Mystic never reached, fruition, that it was never officially released. But I was impressed by what they tried to do with the Mystic, and I wish they had followed through on it.
Personally, I love psionics. I love giving the players another option to be powerful, to be weird.
Yes, sorry. I guess that's the thing. It's like there was a time of high weird in D&D, and I feel like it's not that modern wizards or modern writers haven't tried. I feel, because we have Spelljammer, right? We have Planescape. We have lots of weird. I feel like, and this is not very kind, I feel like they've lost the talent for it, Matt. I feel like they don't. I feel like they don't have the chutzpah to do weird the way that they could do weird in the 80s. It just it feels like a pale imitation of what we used to have, of dying earth shit, of all the weird science fiction, all the weird fantasy that we used to have in the heyday. And psionics is a key part of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's something that I love about the weirdness of psionics. There's something I love about the mechanics of psionics. Like every version of D&D has like given us a different take on it, right? In early editions, you would just have you could just have random powers in addition to your class. In 3E, psionics was the ultimate like fiddly Nova magic system where you tracked every point, and it was a huge headache, but there were all kinds of cool monsters given for it. 4E fully integrated psionics in that you had a psionics class for every flavor of play, right? As defender, controller, healer, etc. And yeah, in 5E, there's plenty of psionic monsters, and there's the psionic tag in things, but not a player option since the Mystic has been abandoned. And yeah, there's a ton of third-party systems. I would say I've looked at a couple, and of course this is including my own, and they all just ape what went before. They're refreshes of the 4E or 3E psionic system. They didn't really try anything new, and I think that's understandable because I think people buying something that says 5E psionics have a set of expectations.
Right. Well, and I think that there's something really cool about I think the old psionic classes work well, and I would never be sad to see them rebuffed or returned. Like, I love the Psionic Warrior, I love the Soul Knife and the Psion. Like, they each had their own flavor. A lot of them were very like mechanically cool and fun to play. And so I think it's, I don't think there's anything wrong with just saying this is the 5e version of that. But I wanted to mention this. What's cool about the talent is that it is not just this is the Psionic Warrior, this is the Soul Knife, this is updated for 5e. It is, you can absolutely see the inspiration of those classes, but this is definitely its own thing, which is very cool.
Yeah, it's its own magic system for 5e, and while a lot of the powers and the orders align very cleanly with earlier psionics, Rob's right. There's no there's no Psychic Warrior. There's no Soul Knife. The names are different. It is not simply a reskin of earlier lore and mechanics to fit with 5e. It's trying to be its own thing, and I think that's nice, right? That's what I would want from a third party.
Yeah. Again, I like the old classes, and I think they're great, but I definitely feel like at this point, it's a good idea and it's valid to come up with something new, and they've absolutely given that a shot here in the talent.
And this is also fun to see this because this is the third full class for 5e D&D that MCDM has put out. The first was an anti-paladin, the Illrigger, which I covered in a previous episode. One we skipped over is...
Hey, thanks everyone for listening to our free preview of this month's bonus episode for Dungeon Master of None. To hear the rest of the episode and dozens of other premium episodes, head over to patreon.com/Dungeon Master of None. Thank you so much to those of you who support the show, and keep rolling them dice.